Ahoy! And welcome to the Boating Hour with Captain Rick. The Boating Hour brings you the latest and greatest essential information about everything that sails, floats, or motors upon the high seas of Southern California. From landlubbers to old salts, there'll be something for everyone. So climb aboard and get ready to sail with Captain Rick.
Ahoy out there and welcome to the Boating Hour. I'm Captain Rick and I want to thank you for joining us here on AM 870. We're here every Saturday at 4 p.m. and please be sure to visit us on the web at theboatinghour.com and now on social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble, The Boating Hour with Captain Rick. Thanks to our sponsors for our show today. For a healthy gut, the best probiotic on the market, Livia One Probiotics, natural, organic, and allergen-free. And Raycom radios, reliable two-way commercial radios throughout Southern California. Stay tuned. We've got some exciting news with Raycom radios. We're going to be doing some seminars, some introduction to radio, including ham radio. We're going to talk all about all the different kinds of communication. We'll even go into a little bit about watch standard, which is what the Coast Guard does to monitor all of our ocean and waterways. So stay tuned for some great news. We'll be at yacht clubs, some boating shows. We had Bart Hall from the Hall Shows, the outdoor exciting and boat shows. He's got a couple exciting things coming up in Long Beach and Pomona, an all-boat show in Pomona. He was our January 1st, our New Year's show. So we're going to talk all about the upcoming Hall shows, all kinds of stuff coming up for you. You know, we have such amazing and exciting guests. And with us today, Josh Post. Josh, thanks for joining us on the Boating Hour.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you so much for having me on the show today.
That's exciting that you're here. You know, I've had such great guests. So exciting to have you because you've got a very interesting story, and I want to get into your background and how you got into boating, and then I want to segue into you being a Navy JAG man. So, that was one of my favorite shows. You ever watch the series JAG?
Oh, yeah, I definitely have watched it. Of course, you know, A Few Good Men back with Tom Cruise.
Oh, of course.
That was kind of what made it big also. You can't handle the truth.
I loved that show. You know, Tom Cruise, I liked all his movies. I thought he's a fantastic actor. He sure knocked that one out of the park. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, he's done great stuff.
The Few Good Men had so many cliches in it now, you know, that's in the vernacular, and they really did a good job on that. I don't know how they do it. You know, when you break it down, these are really short segments, but they tell a whole story. I mean, I kind of felt like I was in Guantanamo. I felt like I was a Navy man. I wanted to join the Navy. How did you get into JAG? Let's first talk about your history, how you got into boating, and how you became a Navy JAG.
Well, it's kind of all tied in together, to be honest, because first of all, I'm from Missouri originally, and I grew up there, and not much, you know, sailing there, although there's a couple little lakes that people do some small boat sailing. But moved out to L.A. right after college, ended up going to law school, did a night program in L.A. I had some other law jobs. I worked at the California Attorney General's office for a bit, and then I got into the Navy. And the interesting thing is, people don't know, but you pretty much, if you're an attorney, you can go in as an officer, and you get in that way, and then you become a JAG, you know, once you do some other training and stuff. And that stands for Judge Advocate General. And so you're just essentially an attorney with the Navy. And you could do various roles, whether it's prosecution, defense. You could help with legal assistance. Let's say a sailor comes back and they got kicked out of their apartment because the landlord was a jerk or whatever. And you could write a letter for them and say, look, there's laws that protect him because he's a sailor. You can't kick him out while he's on deployment. You have to give him certain leeway. Anyway, so to help with certain things like that. Well, but they moved me to San Diego was my first station, and that was, of course, you can't beat San Diego, and especially for sailing. And so I took sailing lessons right away at the local, it's called Fiddler's Cove. It's like a military kind of sailing facility, boat marina down there by Coronado, and just fell in love with sailing right there. You know, like a lot of people do. You get the bug, and then you kind of want to do bigger and more, you know, more distance and more interesting ocean-type stuff, and kind of had these big wide-eyed dreams. So then I spent the next several years learning more and more about sailing, buying a couple of different boats and different things that I don't know how much detail you want me to get into.
Let's talk about your first boat. I want to go all the way up to your Choi Lee. Talk about your first boats and, you know, what you sailed with and your favorite boat. Yeah, let's talk about the different boats you had, while you were in the Navy and what you're doing now.
Oh, certainly. So, like I said, I was in San Diego. I didn't actually buy a boat there. It wasn't until my next duty station for the Navy when they sent me to Annapolis, which is, of course, I don't know if that's considered like the capital of sailing in the country or what, but it's one of the biggest sailing, areas that people just love sailing in Annapolis, Maryland. So I was working at the Naval Academy as an attorney there. They had me doing defense attorney work, so whenever the students would get in trouble, because they're college-age students and they're out there in the streets, they're out kind of partying on the weekends, and they would get in trouble and things. So I would try to help them get out of trouble. So when I was there, of course, was into sailing, and I was joining people with their Wednesday night races and things, and just loving life. And I decided I wanted to get my own small boat, so I bought a Capri 25, which is a real nice kind of learning boat.
Great boat. Great boat.
Yeah,
the Capri,
lightweight,
the Capri 22s are what a lot of sailing classes use. Santa Monica Windjammers Yacht Club, Marina Sailing, they all have Capri 22s. Capris are fantastic boats. Okay, go on. Keep going. How you got started?
No. Yeah. The Capri 25, just loved it, and it was great because I'm always been like a solo kind of person. Like I'll go out every once in a while with friends, but I love the challenge of sort of the solo sailing. Of course, it's harder as the bigger the boat is because it's harder to dock and everything. But with the Capri 25, I could kind of maneuver that in and out of the dock space and this and that. So I was doing a lot of the sailing on my own, and it was around this time when all this YouTube stuff was getting big, especially with sailing. There was all these people doing sailing videos and showing them, doing really exotic things. I'm sure your listeners will probably know of some of these. Like there's one called Delos, which these guys were doing. They're one of the original kind of YouTube sailing. They were going everywhere from Madagascar and just looked so exciting. So I was like, I want to make some sailing videos, right? So I created this kind of how-to sailing, and it's literally going through the very basic step-by-step sailing process, and I ended up kind of just doing it for fun with my little GoPro camera just as an experiment. And I made this, it's probably a 20-minute video. And it's first, I kind of broke it down where I kind of did a classroom component, which I did I was drawing some stuff on a little board and I was showing it on the camera. And then I went onto my boat and I was pointing out all the, components. Here's the boom, here's the mast, this is a line, we don't call it a rope and that kind of thing. And I put it up on YouTube, and all of a sudden it was like a viral hit. And literally it's now the number one how to sail video. If you just literally go on YouTube and search how to sail, you'll find my video most likely is the first one that comes up.
God, that's so exciting. From a jag man new to sailing to the number one viral video. That's really an interesting story.
Yeah, and then I'll kind of get into this if we have time for it, but it's kind of opened other doors for me throughout. Because that was probably more than 5 years ago, probably closer to 10 years ago when I made that video. But it's opened other doors just because I've gotten to know other sailors, literally worldwide, and I've been invited to things in Europe and things because of that, because of other people that I've met through that whole sailing kind of YouTube world, which I'll get back to. But then I'll continue kind of the brief story of my different boat ownership. Had the Capri 25, and then I made that video. I was making other videos, and I was doing kind of how to repair and that kind of thing videos. And then I ended up buying a Beneteau First 38, and that was also in Annapolis, and it was something I found that was on the hard for a number of years. It needed some work. It wasn't in that bad of shape, but it needed some work. The guy who owned it passed away kind of deal, and so the family was trying to get rid of it, so I got a really good deal on it. But I ended up working on it while it was still on the hard for about a year, and my goal was to take it from Maryland. Well, my real goal was to try to go all the way to like Panama and all that, but at least get down to somehow in the Caribbean and everything. So I got out of the Navy in 2018, and then I ended up taking off on this boat and got down to the Bahamas, and just that was just the most amazing, cruising grounds in my opinion. The Bahamas is just beautiful with the water and the clear turquoise water, and just being able to jump off the back of your boat and look at nurse sharks and everything else you can think of in the water. Just beautiful. So had that, and then ended up taking that back to Florida after the Bahamas, and I sold the boat because I was like, well, how am I going to get it to California, that kind of thing. So I got it to Florida, sold the boat, and then moved back because I was always planning to come back to California because that's where I was always living before the Navy. Well, not always. I was, like I said, up from Missouri. And then I went to law school and everything in California, so I wanted to get back here. Plus, my girlfriend was living here. So I got back to California, and I was without a boat. So right away I bought, and I was kind of so in love with my first boat, that Capri 25, that I found another one out here. Actually found it in San Diego, and I ended up cruising it up to Newport Beach where I had a mooring ball.
Oh, wow, okay.
That's a whole. We could have another couple hours worth of conversation about moorings and all the crazy ways to keep boats in California, how it's so expensive and everything. So I had this little Capri 25 on a mooring ball in Newport Beach, and was all just really enjoying it. But like every boater, you always want to go bigger, And
of course.
So I ended up getting a Choi Lee 36, and that was a few years ago. And I was, of course, wide-eyed again with this. I'm like, oh, this is so beautiful. It's like I had the romantic view in my mind of these old classic boats with the beautiful wood.
Choi Lees are fantastic boats, but when you get a Choi Lee, you become a varnish man.
Oh yeah, it was all varnish. It was thinking back on it, I think it was 1967. It was one of the first years that they started putting actually fiberglass hulls. But they had all the wood was above the water line, was pretty much all wood, So everything from the deck to the trim lines to around the portholes and everything else you could imagine with varnish and just crazy amount of art. So I ended up being sort of a slave to that for a few years and cursing myself every time I would go out there because all I'm doing, I was never enjoying the boat. I'm just out there varnishing. And sanding and varnishing and trying to make it at least not deteriorate. So I ended up selling that a few years ago, and I ended up buying another smaller boat. I kept going back to the smaller, less maintenance. I think that's the key to, unless you're really going to do something, like cross oceans and stuff. I kind of always suggest to people keep it small and simple. So I bought a Ranger 26, which is just also another beautiful boat, kind of similar to the Capri 25.
Great boat,
and it's
Gary Mall Ranger.
Simple to maintain. Yeah, so that's kind of my story of boat ownership.
I'll tell you a funny story about a Ranger 26. They've got the nice, and I've had Rangers, a big Gary Mall fan. Gary Mall, when he built Ted Turner's boat for one of the America's Cup, he wanted the advantage early, a psychological advantage. So he made the compromise in engineering. He was a naval architect from Marina Del Rey, actually. And he points real high into the wind, which is usually the first, on that triangle course. They always have you pointing directly into the wind to start the regatta. And so he wanted it to compromise on reaches or downwind, but point to the wind as well as you can. And it worked, with Ted Turner's boat. So I was in a race once, and I came late to the race. Now, in regattas, when the sequence starts, it's usually a 5-minute sequence. You've got to be in the sequence to be eligible. Otherwise, it's a bad start. And when the sequence starts, you turn your motor off. So I came running. I was listening on the radio to the chatter, and I just made it out of the harbor and got into the sequence, into the area, but I wasn't near the start line, and I didn't practice. But the sequence is going. And then somehow, because of all the fighting, people were at the committee boat end or at the pin on the other end. They were all fighting, and I went right down the middle, all alone, and got this amazing start. Everybody thought I had my engine on. I got protested. They said that I didn't turn my engine off. That's how great those Ranger yachts are. Of course, the holy grail of the Ranger line is the Ranger 33, but the 26s are great. The Ranger 23, which is one of the biggest small boats that exist, was used in the movie The Dove.
Wow! Okay.
It got an Academy Award for the music, and was one of the early stories. I think in 1970, where the kid sailed around the world. I'm not sure if he actually did. And I understand that now that he might have used two boats, but Ranger. What a great line with Gary Mall. Let's talk. How did you get the #1 sailing video? I mean, you've got millions of views on that. When did you do that, and what gave you the idea? I mean, why did you want to do it? Because it's a fantastic lessons on how to understand sailing for beginners, and if you're intermediate or advanced, you pick up a lot of knowledge too. How'd that happen?
Well, really, it was because this this sailing instructor guy that I went to down in San Diego when I first learned myself. He was a real character, as a lot of sailors are, just funny and everything. But he had a way of explaining things that was really really simple to understand. And my pet peeve about sailing is it gets very I don't know, elitist when it comes to the the lingo, right? Everybody's talking about the lingo, and if you don't know the lingo, then you're kind of out of the loop or whatever. So I kind of wanted to.
It gets complicated.
The sailing for idiots kind of deal,
Okay, that's me.
Which they actually have, they made that book, of course, because they made all those, whatever for idiots. But anyway.
Oh, they have one of those yellow books, the Idiot series, the sailing. Oh, you're kidding! I got to pick it up.
Idiot's Guide to Sailing, whatever. Yeah, I think I have 2 copies of that. Yeah, I didn't see much on YouTube or anything about like sailing that was kind of simplified for just basic beginners. And I like I said, I didn't want people to be throwing out this terminology that was so complex. I did want to, of course, give some terminology to explain the history, because you still have to know the terminology, but you can also learn it in a way that's fun and not intimidating. So that was my whole plan. So I put together this YouTube video and just literally went out on my boat by myself out there in Maryland, and I had a GoPro strapped to the lifeline essentially with a little clamp. And I was talking to the camera the whole time and explaining, how to do this or that, and here's how you pull the sheet in, and here's the head sail, and here's the end of the wind, what happens if you're in irons, and that kind of deal. But I was doing it in a way that trying to really make it basic, and I think that's why it took off, is because there's thousands of comments, on this thing, and everybody's like, "Oh, this is so great because it's basic, and it makes it good, learning for the beginner, and this and that," and that was my whole plan. So. Yeah.
It's a great video. I mean, I watched it. I can't remember. I think you got 3.8 million views on the darn thing, and all kinds of comments.
Yeah, it just keeps going.
And it's an absolutely fantastic video, and it's got me, looking at yours and all the other videos that came along. So, are you still doing videos? Let's talk about it. Are you still doing videos? Sure. And then let's talk about the YouTube captains. But what videos are you doing now? Are you?
Well, I did. I haven't for a couple of months because I've been so busy. This is kind of an interesting segue. Is that because of my interest in video making and making these YouTube videos, I really wanted to start doing it more professionally, where I was helping like small businesses or whatever, do videos. Because I mean, obviously nowadays everything's video. Everybody wants a video on their Instagram or whatever. Every business wants a video on their website. So there's a real market there, but of course there's a ton of people doing it as well. But I started taking the skills I would learn from editing and videography, and offering that to others. And I've actually gotten quite busy as a professional, videographer. And because of my veteran status, from the Navy, I'm able to, have a veteran business, which is my video production company.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'm getting some like state and local, like county. I work with like LA Metro doing I did a training video for them for their bus drivers. So I've been doing quite a bit of like videography, but not related to sailing necessarily. But then on my own, if I do have some free time, I will put together some different, either traveling or sailing. And just to kind of tell you what I was going to tell you a little earlier, which was that this whole YouTube and making videos has really opened up doors for other sailing opportunities because of the sailing stuff. Like, for example, there's one guy I know, his name's Andy. He's from the UK. And he started getting into boating, and he saw my videos. And so he invited me to Spain, where he was then living with his wife and child. And he's like, "I got a new boat here. Would you want to come over? And all you have to pay for is your flight, because you can stay on my boat. We're going to cruise around. We're going to go to Ibiza and all this stuff." So I'm like, "Yeah, for sure. Count me in." So I flew to Spain. We went around Ibiza and all these different areas around there. And I mean, amazing. But because of that, also building a friendship with Andy, he then started doing his own YouTube and podcasting and things about that centered around sailing. And he has a podcast called the Ocean Cruisers Podcast, and I think that's also his YouTube channel. But he'll interview all kinds of sailors, similar to what you're doing, but on on the podcast type stuff. But because of that, also he becoming friends with him early on, he's like, "Oh, my new thing is I not only want to do this podcast and interview people, I'm going to start organizing what he's calling the Odyssey Sailing Festival." And he's doing it once a year, and he'll invite all these other YouTube-type captains that are kind of well-known on YouTube By the way, the whole reason to do that is just because then you can get more sponsors, or maybe
Sure.
some sponsorship where people want to pay for part of the expenses and whatnot. And also you get a little bit of a built-in fan base, because then those captains off of YouTube have different fans and things that are watching them, and then those people sign up to go on this festival. So the whole deal is I went and joined him once on the first one in the British Virgin Islands, and it was 10 or 11 beautiful catamarans that they rented as charter boats, and each of the catamarans had a different captain that was sort of well known for YouTube, and not only YouTube. You've probably heard of that below deck sailing.
Sure.
That's on Bravo or whatever it is. There's a guy, Glenn is his name. He's Captain Glenn. I can't remember his last name, but people know him as Captain Glenn, and he's the main star of that below deck sailing. He was one of the captains, for example, on one of the boats, and then there was a big YouTube channel called Sailing Uma, and they're a nice couple, and so they were a captain of another one of the boats. And then crew members would pay a pretty decent amount of money to come and be guests for the week on the boat. And so you're doing this, you pay for your vacation, and then you come and you're on the boat for the week, but you're meeting all these new people, and you're learning about sailing, and you're exploring the British Virgin Islands. So it's really a cool setup. But it's because of that he's able to continue. And then he did one in I think it was Greece last year, and then I think next year he's doing the Bahamas. But I guess I'm saying all this just to explain, some of this sort of like YouTube or social media can really open up doors and build this big kind of community of people that get together and stuff. It's pretty cool to see.
I'd like to get him on the. Can you get him on the show? Give him a call. Tell him I'm very interested to promote his. That's the goal of the boating. Okay. Yeah, my show, and we're not the full hour yet, but the goal is for me to promote the activities, what other people are doing at the yacht clubs, at the marinas, especially the youth programs, trying to get these kids out of. Out from their television and their computer and their stupid games that they play on their phones. But because there were so many activities when I was growing up, so I'm trying to promote all the adult and the youth activities at the marinas. That's my goal. I'd love to, dedicate a whole show to that and promote the other YouTubers and stuff. And I got to have you back on the show. We barely scratched the surface, and we're already towards the end of the show.
It's been great talking to you, and I'm happy to share any other info for sure.
Well, definitely.
In the future, whatever, let me know.
Yeah, I'll be at the hall shows. I'm promoting the Coast Guard, and my heart's out to everybody that the tragic fires, everybody in Los Angeles and Altadena, that suffered from the calamity, from the catastrophic fires, and now rebuild LA. I hope we still have the Olympics. That might be in question whether we're going to still have the Olympics. But I was affected, and a lot of people around Marina del Rey, Santa Monica, Pacific Palisades, and Malibu and Topanga, they were affected. So I know a lot of people, and it's real sad. So, by the way, my guest the last week was from Santa Monica Windjammers Yacht Club, and they're doing a lot to help people. There's boats that are, if you're stranded, contact Captain Rick at theboatinghour.com. Put you in touch with the Windjammers Yacht Club and my guests from last week that are helping put people up so that they're not stranded. Well, anyway, that's all the time that we have for you today. Josh, thanks for joining us. I got to have you back on because we barely scratched the surface. I had a lot more questions for you. I want to get more into what it's like being a JAG lawyer, and now you're traveling, sailing, and a YouTube man. So that's kind of an exciting story. Well, that's all the time that we have for you today. I hope you enjoyed our show. As always, we're so very fortunate to have such wonderful and exciting guests, and I want to thank our guest today, Josh Post. It was really exciting. We got a lot of info coming up for the hall shows, and we've got the Armed Forces Parade coming up, Memorial Day weekend at Fleet Week at the Battleship Iowa. So we'll be there, and you'll see me in the Coast Guard Auxiliary booth. And thanks to our sponsor for our show today, for a healthy gut, Livia One Probiotics and Raycom Radios. Reliable two-way radios throughout Southern California without drop zones, dead batteries, and all the inherent limitations of other communication systems. You can see them at mra-raycom.com. Don't forget to visit us on the web at theboatinghour.com. Now on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. This is Captain Rick saying ahoy and fair winds to all. My heart goes out. I hope everybody is safe. And everyone that suffered from losing their properties or in the fire zones, I hope you're safe. Contact Captain Rick if you need a place to stay, you want to go on a boat. We're doing all kinds of stuff.